Hey everyone, this is day 4 of working with my California Extreme Makeover Mustang. I did trailer her back over to the farm down the road. I really like working in the round pen here and using the facilities here. So I'm just going to warm her up by doing some lunging and a little bit of round penning work. You can already tell she's a lot more forward moving today. She's getting less stuck. Work on getting those hips over, getting her going both directions nice and soft. So I ask with my hand and rope first, and then I cluck, and then I add my whip. So if she's getting a little bit lazy, I'm really going to increase the pressure. I like to start them off by moving their feet a little bit more. I think it gets their brains thinking and gets them dialed in and focused. So there, I got a little bit stronger because she was kind of ignoring my yielding hindquarter cue. I'm just going to run through those exercises that I've been working on the past couple days with her. So starting with lowering her head, getting those pole releases in. And I do have some background noise this time. There's someone across the road doing some sort of construction or working on something in their yard. You're going to see for quite a while every day I'm going to focus on getting that pole to lower. And now I do believe this is the first time that I've asked her to move her shoulder and take like a pivot step. What I'm looking for here is for the hind end to stay still and planted and the front end to cross over, getting her to lift her shoulders up. So for this, I'm going to be facing her and kind of walking into her head and neck. I have my left hand on the cheek piece of her halter, and I'm using my whip to help her pick up that shoulder. And I'm just going to reward just for one little step at the start, and eventually I'll start asking for 2 consecutive steps or 3. Good, and she's actually doing really awesome with this. You see, right when I first asked her, she got it with not too much effort put in either, so she's starting to understand it. And then slowly I'll wean off of holding her halter and I'll be able to be lighter with the whip on her shoulder. But for now it helps to have that nose pushed away, that way they can follow their nose with their feet. Good, you can see she has some really nice crossovers too. So now we'll move on to the backup. I'm still not too worried about it being straight yet. I just want her to get off that pressure. She's getting a little stuck, so I bump my hand some. But you can tell that this time I asked for a few more backup steps than I have the prior days, so now I'm raising my expectations for her. I'm expecting her to be able to back up for a longer distance before I release and reward her. So now back onto those hindquarter movings. Just a quick refresher on that. Making sure she's comfortable with me petting down her legs, which I did a little bit the day before. And now I have the rope around her leg because I'm going to lead her by her feet. And she's a little bit confused, but she's not having a bad reaction at all. She doesn't seem to mind too much that the rope is on there. So the reason that I teach them to lead by their feet is, first, I can get their legs and hooves handled without me having to be super close with my body and my hands and my head near their legs. I feel like I can really get them comfortable with touch and the feeling of their legs being semi-restrained.
Good.
Also, it's pretty helpful for if they ever get stuck or tangled up in something, that they already know what restriction feels like. So I like to do this ahead of time in like a controlled environment where I can help them out of it if they panic. So now I'm working on picking her hoof up with it. And I did do this on both legs, but I took the rope off and now it's just my hand on her hoof. So I'm going to hold it for a pretty short amount of time, and I'm going to make sure I'm the one to place her hoof back down. That way she doesn't pull it away from me.
Very nice.
That's on the right leg, and again, I did lead her with both legs.
Yeah.
Just so the video is not quite as long, I'll only show that left leg. So she did really awesome with that. I really like to lead them by their feet. I'll have no pressure on that halter, and I want her to be able to change her direction and move just off of where the rope is going. Now I'm putting the rope around her cinch area. Some people call this flanking, some people call this like a cinch rope. There's a bunch of different words for it. I like to call it a belly rope. So I do this to get her prepared for the feeling of pressure around her barrel. Good.
Good girl.
And some people do this really far back, and they do it sometimes to get the bucks out of them or make their horse buck or something. I don't do that unless my horse has an issue and I'm trying to work them through something. I try to keep it pretty far up where a normal girth would be, like on my English saddle. And I want her to give to this pressure too. So very similar to leading by the feet, I want her to be able to give in whatever direction I'm adding that pressure. So she did great. She faced up every time I pulled on that rope. I didn't use the lead rope, I just used the belly rope. I just had to get some forward motion out of her, but she did pretty awesome with that. So we just did that maybe like 3 or 4 times, and that was it. This is her first time seeing a saddle pad. I'm gonna let her sniff it and check it out. And then rub it all over her, her neck, her shoulder, her back, her hip. You can tell by her head and her ears that she's definitely listening to it and paying attention to it. And one thing that you'll see me do a lot is I'll go from side to side on my horse, taking it on and off, and I'll walk them around with it on. So getting more of that flapping motion going up to her. I always start with it folded in half, and then I'll go to the full size. I do the same thing with the tarp. She's moving away from it here. She's a little bit nervous with it being opened up wider. So I'm just gonna stick with her calmly and just hold it next to her until she relaxes and stops moving her feet. And then I'll take away the pressure. And then go right back to putting it on her. Good, and she's doing really awesome. She's not a super spooky horse. So now I have it, like I said, I put it on all parts of their body. So she did awesome with the saddle pad, so I'm gonna move on to the saddle right now. And I'll start by letting her sniff it, moving it around her sides and her head. I know some Mustangs get pretty freaked out by the scent of a saddle, so it's good to see she's not too worried. I'll just put it all over her side. She's not too stressed about the flaps making noise. I'll lead her around with it on her back too, that way it can fall off if she gets a little worried, or I can take it off without being totally strapped to her yet. And she's a little bit worried about the noise up there. I'm going to keep patting on it until she relaxes a little bit. Good, so the first step was just her stopping her feet, and you could see me lower her head afterwards right away, just to remind her to get that release. So now we got the saddle and the saddle pad. And we got a little bit distracted by the big machinery going around in the background. Now we're gonna girth her up. So I try to make this process pretty fast, just in case they have a reaction I can get out of their way. But I also need to make sure that it is cinched up tight enough where if they have a reaction, it's not gonna get into a sticky situation. So I'm quick to get her out of my space, but then I also want to let her know that she is being a good girl right now. Let her check the tack out, and then I'm going to start having her go out on a circle. And I'm going to keep the line on her rather than have her be completely loose. That way if she does freak out, I can help her out some by yielding her hindquarters and giving her some exercises that she remembers to calm her brain down and refocus her. Luckily, she doesn't seem all too worried about it. So again, I want to make sure she's out of my space and moving. Really awesome. So the first time I tack them up, I want to have them walk with it on, trot, and canter. So you're going to see me push her into the canter a little bit, and she's lazy, so it takes a lot.
Good girl.
I just want a couple strides. She doesn't have to hold it for too long yet, especially because we haven't worked on it. Just push for a couple steps, and then I'll allow her to drop back down. And I do this just to make sure I can see their reaction with the tack at every single gait right when I put it on them. She yielded her hindquarters nice there, and you can see she stayed out this time. If you remember the first day when I was working on it, she would come right into me and get in my space. And we make sure to do everything in both directions.
Good.
After we moved with the saddle on some, I'm going to move the flaps and stirrups on her. Pretty much almost no reaction from snapping the stirrups. You saw she got tense right there for 1 second, but that's really nothing. So I let her hang out in there for a while, and I went and grabbed Lynx. I don't have much experience ponying. I'm not going to dally her off the horn or anything. I'm just going to hold her rope in my hand. I would love to learn more about ponying, but I just don't know enough right now. So I'm just getting her used to Lynx trotting around the pen and moving in here. She doesn't seem too bothered or worried. She's actually a little bit more wary of a horse wearing tack without a rider than a horse with a rider on it. It was kind of interesting to see. And she figured out to follow along pretty fast. If she got ahead there, I just gave her a little bump on that rope to get her back. Once she finds that release, she gets the slack in the rope. I was so happy with Lynx too. He's only ponied maybe like a handful of times, like 5 or 6 times, and one was with a tiny little Mustang, one was with a warm blood that already wanted to be next to another horse because he was a little insecure. But I don't believe I ever ponied a wild one off of him before. I know I didn't pony Rue off of him because Rue was very angry. She did not like other horses at the start. So this is his first time ponying a wild one. And now we're gonna work on this other side. So I like this because I can get her used to me being above her and petting her, and to get her prepared for a rider being above her in that position. So I just want her to step up and get a little bit closer to Lynx. I pretty much just face her from every direction while I'm up here and pet on her head, reach over to the other side of her neck, pat on the saddle. And we just stayed at the walk for today. Again, I gotta work on my ponying skills first, I think. And this was cool for Lynx too, because I could also really work on dialing down his body parts, and he was so good at this. He pushed her in a direction when I needed him to, and he kept trying to stay parallel to her. He was so cool to do this with. So she starts to get a little bit worried about me being on both sides of her. And this is kind of another topic, but a lot of people like to flex their horses right when they get on. I like them to have their heads straight forward and relaxed, because then they can see me out of both eyes and it's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be something where I feel like I have to hold them tight and hold them back in case they're going to explode. It's more relaxed like that. So she's getting a little bit nervous seeing me out of both eyes, but that's okay because she's going to have to eventually anyways. And I'd rather her see me like that while I'm on Lynx or even on the ground rather than panic the first time that I get on her. I was like, I don't know if I should even video this ponying part because Lynx and I are still learning it and working at it, and he's doing a really good job, but I don't want it to look super sloppy. I figured it gets the mare used to quite a few things. That's the end of day 4, I believe, and I was really happy I was able to get her tacked up and ponying around, and she started to understand the basic concept of where I wanted her to stay in relation to Lynx when we were ponying. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and day 5 will be up tomorrow.